What up, YouTube? It's Two Fat Guys Pull Us, and right before you get to the video, we wanted to just include you into some information about our channel. We're in the middle of a milestone giveaway. If we hit 500 subscribers, we're giving away a slab. What slab are we giving away, Nate?
We're giving away a CGC graded 9.4 Wolverine #1 with a custom label as well, a custom Wolverine label. This is the #1, the first in his ongoing series.
Yes, but the only way we can give it away is if we hit 500 subscribers. So make sure to hit that subscribe button, hit that bell, and yeah, so let's get on to the video, shall we? What up, YouTube? It's Two Fat Guys Pull Us here, and we've got some breaking comic book news. God damn it. Say it ain't so.
Last week was bad. Now it's fuck.
Say it ain't so, but it looks like Jonathan Hickman's got to go. Jonathan Hickman is leaving X-Men with Inferno's conclusion. X-Men showrunner Jonathan Hickman is departing the fan-favorite franchise after Inferno, though this doesn't mean that it's the end of his Marvel tenure. Yeah, I don't know how much I believe that.
Yeah, me neither. I don't know how much I even care at this point.
Ooh, wow. Ooh, wow. This is gonna be a spicy video, y'all.
Yeah, prolific writer Jonathan Hickman is stepping away from Marvel's X-Men line after the conclusion of the upcoming Inferno event. Inferno marks the end of Hickman's time as a showrunner on the X-Men franchise. This is not the end of his time at Marvel. According to Entertainment Weekly, Hickman is already working on his next big Marvel thing, which should make its debut sometime next year, along with a weekly X-Men series.
So, before we go any further, so they're saying there's going to be this new weekly X-Men series. I'm assuming he's not involved in that?
No, I don't think so.
That's why I find it interesting that they just kind of put that little tidbit in the article, like, oh, and by the way, there's going to be, like, Jonathan Hickman's leaving. Here's a Band-Aid. There's going to be a weekly X-Men comic.
Yeah, I think that was probably what was trying to be done there. Maybe it's going to follow an outline that he made in some way, and that's why they're pairing it together. But yeah, the article doesn't really give us any more information on that whatsoever. It's just sort of like, oh, here you go.
Here's a little tidbit. Yeah, anyway. So basically, Hickman goes on to talk about how, you know, he was ready after phase 1, which is basically Hoxpox and like the flushing out of after Hoxpox. He wanted to move on to phase 2 within the X office, right? And none of the writers wanted to do that. None of the side, you know, Teenie Howard, Jerry, Williams, who else? I know I'm missing a bunch.
Yeah.
But they didn't want to. They wanted to continue to stay in that bubble of kind of year 1, phase 1, pre-Hoxpox, and Hickman was ready to move on, right?
He even says that, like, directly quotes that he says that, like, I was ready to move on to the first act. He said, during the pandemic, when the time came for me to start pointing things toward the second act event, I asked everyone if they were ready for me to do that, and to a man, everyone wanted to stay in the first act. It was really interesting because I appreciated that House of X resonated with them to the extent that they didn't want it to end. The reality was that I knew I would be leaving the line early. So he knew pretty much by the time they were done writing Hoxpox, he was like, oh yeah, this isn't gonna work.
Damn, that sucks. I don't know, man. This, I know we tried to kind of, I don't want to say keep the faith, but like we were us as readers, and when I say us, I mean me and you. I'm not talking about our general community. We were in it for the long haul. We really dug. I mean, Hoxpox is essentially the gateway drug that really got us into going into the comic hobby. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like we were dabbing with Star Wars and Thor and, you know, Ghost Rider, but, you know, when we walked into the shops, they were like, have you read Hoxpox yet? And we're like, what the fuck are you talking about? And, you know, after reading it, we were both kind of like, this is it. This is the jam. You know, I remember 90s, mid to late 90s X-Men. Let's go. And it was such a drastic change in direction. And now we're hearing, like you're saying, like it looks like right after he got done writing it, the team was kind of like, no, let's kind of stay in this bubble.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, Hickman writes for the long game. He writes omnibuses. You know, he doesn't write little minis.
Right.
And
well, and the fact that they still wanted to stay there, he didn't, I think, speaks to that as well, because usually he will stay in an era for a while before he moves on.
Right. And I gotta wonder, I mean, it's not like we're ever gonna find out like the dirty laundry, like which writers were the ones that wanted to stay, but I also have
Says
to
every
wonder.
one of them. He says to a man, every one of them wanted to stay.
That's nuts to me, man. Like if you're gonna pick somebody as a head of a franchise, right, like the X-Men, you would assume that you would be like the ride or die. Like every time we've heard, during the pandemic, there were these online interviews with Marvel where they were talking to Teenie Howard and Jerry Duggan and whoever, and they'd be on there going like, oh yeah, being in the X office is so much fun. Like we get together, we have retreats, we do the Zoom calls, and we really collaborate and just meta, right? And now we're getting this, and it's kind of like Hickman's just kind of like, I'm good. You all aren't moving in the direction I want to move, and that just seems very disheartening. We were talking to Ron today at the shop about it, and he basically, I would assume that he has a little bit better of an inside view of it, and I think I tend to agree with him that Ten of Swords was essentially phase 2.
Yeah.
Or act 2 for him, and now Inferno's coming, and this is going to be his conclusion. And I will agree, like I felt like when Ten of Swords came out, it came out of nowhere. Like I felt like we were still trying to flush out some ideas before we even got to Ten of Swords. Like after reading it as a whole, it feels kind of rushed.
Well, and I still feel like we've really only barely touched Araco. Like we still don't have active Arakan mutants. We're finally starting to get them. But it's taken so long for them to have. They've had no real world impact, or I say real world, but no impact on 616 Earth at all until like the last Wolverine issue. And obviously they're in Mars now, and so like okay, that could have a big impact, but like I don't even think that's even been mentioned in another Marvel book. Like it's just sort of like okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's been mentioned. I think it's been mentioned. Well, obviously, like in Guardians, because they're just so interconnected.
Hey, besides the same
like,
guy writing 2 different books,
right? Not in an Iron Man or a Captain America or Wakanda, at least not, or Wakanda, Black Panther, at least not yet. But I agree with you. Like we literally after Ten of Swords, we got Araco and then immediately shipped to Mars. Like they didn't do anything, and my biggest fear. Don't get me wrong, I am looking forward to Inferno. Inferno to me is going to be so much fun because it's going to be Hickman, right? Now that we know it's his conclusion, I'm really worried. And I think this has always been the plan. Again, we talked to Ron about this, and he was like, oh, duh. Is that Inferno quite literally is going to burn it down. And I know that you're still in the camp holding faith out that Krakoa and Araco will still be around, and the idea of that whole idea will still exist, but I just have a really bad feeling that Inferno will quite literally burn this mutant nation down.
So we're just gonna have a brand new status quo with all of the mutants after this.
I think I'm not saying it makes sense. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying, hey, this makes total sense. I'm just saying I have a bad feeling about it. I feel like Marvel's like, you know what? Refresh. We need Joe Blow. Random Joe that walks into a shop that is like, you know what? I used to like the X-Men back in the 90s. Pick up an X-Men book.
Just put them back in the yellow suits and everything.
I'm just saying, like, look, I have no problem with Jerry's X-Men right now. Like, it's really good. But I told you today at work, like, there's nothing wrong with this, but it feels very vanilla comparative to Hoxpox.
Yeah.
Like, it's a superhero team that's defending Earth. There's nothing wrong with that. And then there's just this little hint of like Hickman in the sense that the humans are catching on to Resurrection Protocol. And clearly, like, all roads lead to the fact that they're probably going to lose Resurrection Protocol. And you brought up something that I think is worth noting, at the fact that, I think you and me both think that the mutants are not very far off from being in the MCU.
Yeah.
And they can't be immortal if they're in the MCU.
No, it's just not going to work. I don't think that we'll see Resurrection Protocols or Krakoa or anything like that in the MCU.
Right.
And that's the only thing I can really think of, is that this change will get them back to a more familiar status quo that is easier to translate on screen, and thus be similar to what people are going to experience on movies or TV in the next 2 or 3 years from now.
Right, and I know, and we're generalizing it. Like, we're making a big jump in that assumption. Like, hey, this is why they're doing it. We have no fucking clue why they're doing it, but for me to look at it and just like my perception of the situation, Jonathan Hickman is too meta. He's too smart. He's too complex for Disney, I think.
I just don't like. I don't know. I think at this point, so many different people are saying so many different things. They say it way more with AT&T than they do Disney, but it's like, oh well, AT&T doesn't really care about print comics, so they're not really worried about that. And Disney's just, they don't want anyone to be in control, and they don't want anyone to have the power. They just want to be the. And it's like, listen, if that's the case, I feel like they would just be like, what the fuck, just do whatever you want, and just like leave people alone. But that's not the case at all.
Yeah.
I think that we probably still have some old blood Marvel dudes that have been in the editor's office since late 80s that just want their vision, or I don't know, maybe Kevin Feige's like, no, you can't do that. MCU's way bigger than you, and this isn't going to work for MCU, so you need to change it.
Right. Yeah, we'll never know.
I think that I do think this is my biggest hot take from this whole thing.
Okay.
Is that I will never again, and I'm sure there are comic collectors out there right now that have been in the game for 10 plus years that are going to laugh at me for saying this because they've experienced it before. But I will never again buy into the hype of a creator taking over an entire mythos corner of a Marvel DC again. And like, I'm frustrated that I stuck it out so hard for some of these books that I probably have $60-$80 worth of books that I probably wouldn't have picked up if I hadn't just believed in the Hickman idea. And it's not going to come to fruition, and it's never going to be what we thought it was going to be. And
I mean, well, okay, yeah, and like you said, this is your hot take. Let me reel you back in just a little bit. I'm gonna try to lift you up just a little bit here. Okay. Again, granted, like I said, I feel like Inferno is going to be the one to just burn it all down. But let me flip it. Let's play devil's advocate, and let's assume, just for this conversation's sake, that Hickman doesn't do that. That Hickman lays the road out for the rest of the writers who want to continue to stay in this like phase 1, phase 2 bubble and really flush out the Arakans. Now, again, it's easier it's actually harder to imagine in hopefulness thought than to be negative and just to criticize, right? Yeah. But let's kind of flip the coin, flip the tone, and say maybe that's what he's doing. Maybe he's like, you know what? I've established this mythos. We can't just let it go. And so after Inferno, I will lay seeds. I will lay the roadway for everybody else that's in the X office to continue forward in this mythos. But maybe we lose Resurrection Protocol. Maybe we lose a unified Krakoa. Maybe there's a civil war between. Maybe Inferno starts the civil war amongst mutants, and we've got mutants going to Araco and trying to get them to help out. Who knows? I guess we got to get a little hopeful, but again, it's just really hard to.
I'm not very.
I know, and I'm kind of in the same boat. Like I am extremely frustrated because I enjoy Jonathan Hickman's work. I think he's a smart writer. I think that it wasn't that far of a reach for Hickman to take the X-Men, the classic idea of X-Men, and really just throw a curveball in there, and that's what he did. I mean, I reread. I think I've reread Hoxpox maybe 6 times. You know what? I want to read it again because I want to remember, like, certain things get mentioned within the current titles, and I'm like, wait, I remember that, and so I'll go back and read Hoxpox, and I'm like, fuck, this is so good. And I thought Ten of Swords, the Omega or the Alpha, the Omega, and the in between issue, I thought were really good. Like, I was like, this feels like classic Hickman. I don't know, man. It's very disheartening. I want to stay hopeful.
Yeah.
But dude, an X Office without Hickman, I don't know. I just don't know. And
I don't either.
I don't know where it's going to go from here. I hope this doesn't, even though I kind of already have said it, I really hope Inferno is fulfilling and is an epic conclusion as it was the beginning with Hoxpox. That's what I'll say.
I have absolutely no hope. There's my double big hot take, is I have absolutely no hope.
Yeah,
but we'll see.
We'll see what happens. I mean, again, and then there's this whole little thing of him like potentially working on his next big Marvel thing. We'll get into that into our next video because I don't think he really has a next big Marvel thing. But you know,
maybe he
starts
does.
with an S, ends with a K. Right?
What?
No?
Oh yeah, sorry, no. I was thinking you were saying he was going to work on Spider-Man or something. I was like,
well, that has been floated out there too.
Yeah.
Like some people are like, what if he does Spider-Man? Which again, you know, we've got, and we're kind of going into a tangent, but I do want to hit that. Is some people have been floating out that he's going to do Spider-Man because you've got these multiple writers currently working on the Spider-Man Beyond, which is from 75 till whenever. I would not be surprised, and I would be actually quite excited if Hickman got a hold of Spider-Man in 2022. That being said, with everything that he's doing with Substack, I don't think he's very long for Marvel.
Well, I don't, and who knows what his actual contracts look like, right? Like maybe he literally doesn't have a choice. Like, I mean, he could break his contract and get sued and shit, but like, who knows? Also, Jonathan Hickman writing Spider-Man might be the worst pairing you could possibly do. Spider-Man is not supposed to be that cerebral. So, well,
you say that, but Jonathan Hickman might surprise you.
Okay, we're gonna have Resurrection Protocols for Spider-Man next.
We'll have to wait and see. Anyway, that's the news. Jonathan Hickman is leaving the X Office. I don't think he's leaving Marvel, but you know, we'll have to wait and see. It's depressing, but anyway, we figured we'd get the news to y'all, and you know, make sure to hit that subscribe button, hit that bell, give us a like, and as always, read more comics. We'll see you guys later.